Gene Ailey spent some of his youth hoping to receive a scholarship to play basketball at the University of Virginia. But when that offer turned out to be insufficient, he ended up signing a baseball contract with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Though probably a bit disappointed, it all worked out just fine as he went on to become a two-time All-Star and a two-time Gold Glove winner. In the field, he was very steady with good range and an accurate arm, and that enabled him to lead the National League in double plays in both 1966 and 1967. He could swing a good bat too. In 1966, he had a career-high .299 batting average, and then in 1967, he had a very respectable .287 batting average. He topped all that off in 1969 with a 21-game hitting streak. Later on in his career, 1970, he would hit a very rare inside-the-park grand slam, and then in 1971, he would help the Pittsburgh Pirates win their first of two World Series championships for the decade. The ninth best shortstop in the 1960s was New York Yankee Tony Kubek. Tony was the 1957 Rookie of the Year, and then in 1961 and 1962, he would help the New York Yankees win the World Series. His best season was 1960, when he would hit 14 home runs, have 62 RBIs, and score 77 runs. And then in 1962, he would have a career-high batting average of .314. During his 9-year career with the New York Yankees, he would have a very formidable double-play combo with second baseman Bobby Richardson. Did anybody out there know that there is a Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame? I did not, but apparently Tony Kubek is a member of it. Coming in at number 8 is Kansas City and Oakland Athletic Bert Campaneris. Bert Campaneris only played 5 seasons during the 1960s, but he led the American League in stolen bases 4 times, and each of those 5 seasons he had a minimum of 50 stolen bases. For the decade, he stole 219 bases and scored 419 runs, and then in 1965 he led the league in triples. His best season would be 1968, when he would steal 62 bases, score 87 runs, have a batting average of .276, and finish 11th in MVP voting that season. In 1969, he set a major league record with 12 consecutive games with at least 1 stolen base. And for his career, he set franchise records for the Athletics in games played, at-bats, and hits. The interesting thing about Bert Campaneris to me is that during the 1960s he only hit 24 home runs, yet he is one of only 5 Major League Baseball players in the history of the sport to hit 2 home runs during their Major League debut. Before Dave Concepcion became a big part of the Cincinnati Reds' Big Red Machine, the Reds had Leo Cardenas playing shortstop for them. In the 1960s, Cardenas was a 4-time All-Star and the 1965 Gold Glove winner. In 1966, he had career highs with 20 home runs and 81 RBIs. For the decade, he had 82 homers, 483 RBIs, and 389 runs scored. On top of all of those impressive numbers, he was also one of the top fielding shortstops during his era and led the league in fielding percentage in both 1963 and 1966. Leo Cardenas is a member of the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. And the 6th best shortstop of the 1960s goes to Dick Groat. Groat spent the 1960s with several different teams, but he was primarily a member of the St. Louis Cardinals and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Dick Groat was one of the most accomplished two-sport athletes in American history. He was not only a collegiate All-American in baseball, but he was a collegiate All-American in basketball also. And while he would go on to be a great baseball player, winning the 1960 MVP award and finishing as runner-up in the 1963 MVP race, he was drafted 3rd overall in the 1952 NBA draft. And he was having a fantastic rookie basketball season before he decided to turn his full attention to baseball. During his 1960 MVP season, he led the league with a .325 batting average and scored 82 runs. In his 1963 MVP runner-up season, he hit .319, scored 85 runs, and had 73 RBIs. He would finish his baseball career up with over 2,000 hits and have a career lifetime batting average of .287. Grote was the first player to ever be elected to both the Collegiate Baseball and Basketball Halls of Fame, and he is the first Duke Blue Devil to have his number retired, and he's also a member of the Pittsburgh Pirates Hall of Fame. Coming in at number 5 is Detroit Tiger Dick McAuliffe. Dick was a 3-time All-Star, and in 1968, he would lead the American League with 95 runs scored. He would hit 16 home runs that season, have 50 extra base hits, finish second in fielding percentage, and become the first and only American League player to get through an entire season without hitting into a double play. And if all that wasn't enough, during the World Series, he would hit a home run that would help the Detroit Tigers upset the St. Louis Cardinals for the World Championship. For the decade, he would hit 142 home runs, have 630 RBIs, and score 480 runs. Number 4, Zoilo Versalles. Zoilo was a 3-time All-Star that in 1965 led the league with 45 doubles. 45! He also had 12 triples and scored 126 runs. On top of all that year, he won the 1965 Gold Glove, hit 19 home runs with 77 RBIs, won the American League MVP, and helped lead the Minnesota Twins to the World Series. He led the league in triples 3 times, and he finished the decade with 90 home runs, 448 RBIs, 625 runs scored, 230 doubles, 63 triples. Zoilo Versalles is a member of the Minnesota Twins Hall of Fame. I don't know why I put so many shortstops on this list, but we're finally down to the final 3, and number 3 is LA and California Angel Jim Fregosi. Fregosi was a 5-time All-Star that led the league in double plays twice, and at the end of 7 different seasons, he would receive votes for MVP. He would score 70 or more runs 6 times, including in 1964 when he had a career-high 86 and also had a career-high 18 home runs. During the 1960s, he would hit for the cycle not once, but twice, and in 1968, he would lead the league with 13 triples. Jim Fregosi is a member of the California Angels Hall of Fame, and interestingly enough, after his career ended, he would manage several Major League Baseball teams and accumulate over 1,000 career victories. According to a quick Google search, there are 26 former shortstops that are in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. But from my 1960s shortstops list, there is only one, Luis Aparcio. Luis possessed exceptional fielding and base stealing skills. He won 6 Gold Gloves during the decade, and starting in 1956, he led the league in stolen bases 9 times. He led the league in fielding percentage 7 times during the decade. He stole 342 bases, and he scored 700 runs to go along with over 400 RBIs. For his career, he would finish with over 2,500 hits, and he would break Major League records for shortstops in both hits and total bases, records that wouldn't be broke until the likes of Cal Ripken and Derek Jeter came along. He also held Major League records for assists and double plays that wouldn't be broken until Ozzie Smith came along. The best shortstop of the 1960s was the Dodgers' replacement for Hall of Famer Pee Wee Reese, Mr. Maury Wills. Maury Wills led the National League in stolen bases 6 times, and then in 1962, he would beat out Willie Mays to win the National League MVP award. That season, he would not only score 130 runs with a .299 batting average, but he would break Ty Cobb's modern-day record for stolen bases in a season with a jaw-dropping 104. How jaw-dropping was that? No other team during the major leagues that season would have 104 stolen bases. In 1965, he would finish third in MVP voting, and in 1963 and 1965, he would help the Dodgers win the World Series. If you guys have any great Maury Wills stories, please share them in the comments. I have one. One day against the New York Mets, Maury Wills was on first base. Mets pitcher Roger Craig was on the mound, and Craig threw 12 consecutive balls over to first base trying to hold Wills on before he finally threw a pitch to the plate. And on that pitch to the plate, Wills stole second.